My name is Lily. I'm standing here, in this grand dining room, where the air is thick with tension and unspoken words. The opulent chandelier above casts a harsh light on the 18 faces staring back at me. My father, Mark Thompson, slams his fist on the table, the sound echoing through the room like a gunshot. This girl abandoned her own newborn baby, he roars, his face red with fury. She's heartless, worthless, and a complete disgrace to the Thompson name. After these years, I disown her. She is no longer my daughter. The room falls silent. Everyone's eyes are on me, but I don't cry. I don't scream. I've carried this secret for too long, a weight so heavy it could shatter everything he's built. And tonight, my grandmother, Amelia Harris, decides it's time. She calmly sets down her glass, locks eyes with my father, and asks a single question that makes him turn as white as a sheet. It's the beginning of the end of his lies. To understand how I got here, you need to know about my life before it all fell apart. I grew up in the prestigious neighborhood of Beverly Hills, in a sprawling mansion at 987 Oakwood Lane. It was a palatial 3-story house with a marble facade and an immaculate garden filled with roses that bloomed year-round. The Thompson family was well known in the city. My father, Mark, was a powerful corporate executive at one of the largest investment firms in California. He was on the board of numerous charities and was always in the news for his philanthropy. People in Beverly Hills knew his name, and in our house, that name was like a golden ticket. Thompson opens doors, he used to tell us during our lavish Sunday dinners. We'd sit around a long mahogany table that had been a family heirloom for generations. My father would sit at the head, my mother, Isabella, to his right, my older brother, Ryan, my older sister, Olivia, and I, the youngest, at the end. But one scandal, Lily, my father would say, his cold eyes finding mine across the table. And those doors will slam shut forever. I was supposed to be grateful for the privilege of carrying the Thompson name, but what I didn't realize then was that to him, it meant total control. I was the perfect daughter. Ryan was being groomed to take over my father's business, and Olivia married a wealthy businessman from a prominent family. As for me, I was supposed to be the quiet one, the one who smiled at social events and always followed the rules. I had a perfect GPA, volunteered at high society charities, and wore the designer clothes my mother picked out. In every family photo, I stood at the end, smiling obediently. I played the part well until I couldn't anymore. My father controlled every aspect of our lives, who our friends were, where we went on vacation, even what hobbies we could pursue. His control was subtle, a look, a raised eyebrow, and I'd correct my behavior. My mother never dared to oppose him. After over 25 years of marriage, by the time I was in high school, she'd lost all her spirit. She smiled when he smiled, nodded when he spoke, and enforced his rules as if they were her own. Ryan and Olivia had learned the same lesson: obedience meant peace, and challenge meant disaster. But there was one person who saw through it all, my grandmother Amelia. She lived in a cozy bungalow in Santa Monica, about 20 miles away. Her house was filled with the smell of freshly baked cookies and the warmth of love. Every Saturday, I'd drive over and sit with her in her sun-filled kitchen while she told me stories and sorted through old photo albums. "Your father loves the idea of a perfect family more than he loves the people in it," she told me once when I was 16. At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. She squeezed my hand and said, "The person who shouts the loudest often has the most to hide." I thought about those words a lot. My teenage years in that mansion felt like living in a gilded cage. Everything looked perfect on the outside, but inside, the house was filled with unspoken rules and a constant sense of obligation. Everything changed when I met Ethan Carter. It was a sunny day in March 2017. I was a junior at Beverly Hills High School, and he was a senior. We met at the local library. I was struggling with a physics problem, and he sat down next to me and said, "Let me help you." His smile was so genuine, so different from the fake smiles I was used to. Ethan wasn't from a wealthy family. He lived in a small apartment in downtown LA and worked part-time at a coffee shop to help his single mother pay the bills. But he was kind, smart, and he saw me as more than just the daughter of Mark Thompson. "You don't have to be perfect around me, Lily," he said one evening at the beach. "You can just be yourself." I didn't know what that meant at first, but with him, I started to figure it out. We kept our relationship a secret because my father had made it clear that I wasn't allowed to date until I graduated from college. So we'd meet in secret places: the park, the coffee shop where he worked, and the quiet corners of the beach at sunset. Those stolen moments with Ethan became the most precious part of my life. We talked about our dreams. He wanted to become a software engineer and create apps that would change the world. I confessed my fears of disappointing my father and how I felt like I was living a lie. He'd hold my hand and tell me that I was so much more than the role I was supposed to play. But our love was like a fire in the night, beautiful but dangerous. And then, on a fateful night in August 2017, Ethan was on his way home from work. A drunk driver ran a red light and crashed into his car. Ethan died instantly. The driver, a 40-year-old man, walked away with minor injuries. I couldn't go to his funeral because my family didn't know about our relationship. I stood across the street from the cemetery, hidden behind a large oak tree, and watched them lower his casket into the ground. I couldn't even say goodbye out loud. The pain was unbearable. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping. At school, I was a ghost, going through the motions but feeling nothing. And then, I started to feel sick. I took 3 pregnancy tests, buying them from a pharmacy far away so no one would recognize me. All 3 came back positive. I was 17, a senior in high school, and the father of my baby was gone. I was completely alone. I knew that in my father's world, this was a disaster, a scandal that could destroy the Thompson name. I decided to hide it. I drove to my grandmother's house and told her everything. I expected her to be angry, to judge me, but instead, she wrapped her arms around me and said, "This baby is a part of you and a part of the boy you loved. We'll protect her." At my 12-week ultrasound, I found out I was having a girl. My grandmother became my only support. She drove me to all my prenatal appointments, telling my mother that we were just spending quality time together. I told my parents that I was taking an online internship to get a head start on college. I wore loose clothes, saying I'd gained weight from stress. On May 10, 2018, at 2:30 in the morning, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, Emily Rose. Emily was after Ethan's grandmother, and Rose was after my grandmother's favorite flower. When they placed her in my arms, I knew I'd do anything to protect her. I had 3 precious weeks with her. 3 weeks of sleepless nights, feeding her, holding her, and singing her to sleep. I made plans with my grandmother. I'd defer college for a year, get a part-time job, and figure out childcare. But then, my father called. He said he was worried about me and would come by on Sunday to check on things. I should have run, but I didn't. On June 3, 2018, he showed up unannounced at my grandmother's house. I was in the living room, nursing Emily. He froze when he saw us. For a moment, there was silence, and then he exploded. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. Emily started crying, and I tried to calm her while trying to explain, but he wouldn't listen. "You've ruined everything," he roared. "This will destroy our family's reputation." He didn't ask how I was, or who the father was. He just gave me a choice: give Emily up for adoption or be cut off from the family forever. The next 3 days were a living nightmare. He took me back to the mansion and locked me in my room. I wasn't allowed to see Emily, and I could barely eat or sleep. He kept the lights on all night, and every time I started to doze off, he'd make a noise to wake me up. He would sit next to my bed and repeat the same thing over and over: "You're not fit to be a mother. You're just a child yourself. If you love her, you'll give her a real family." By the 3rd day, I was so broken, so exhausted that I started to believe him. When he put the adoption papers in front of me, I signed them, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to fight him. My father worked quickly. He contacted an adoption agency, the Silver Crest Adoption Agency, and within days, he'd arranged everything. A wealthy couple in Beverly Hills, Robert and Sarah Miller, in their late 30s and childless, were eager to adopt. The total payment for the adoption was $300,000. On paper, it looked legitimate. Birth mother medical care was $40,000, living expenses were $30,000, legal fees were $50,000, counseling was $35,000, administrative fees were $55,000, and a charitable donation to the Thompson Family Foundation was $90,000. But in reality, most of the money went into my father's pocket or the foundation that he used to boost his public image. On June 15, 2018, Emily was handed over to the Millers. I wasn't allowed to say goodbye. My father told everyone that I'd abandoned her. For the next few weeks, I was in a daze. Before I left Beverly Hills, I went back to the mansion while my father was at work. I found all the documents related to the adoption, the invoices, and the bank transfer receipts. I made copies and gave them to my grandmother, asking her to keep them safe. On August 5, 2018, I left with a small suitcase and $200 in my pocket. I took a bus to Seattle. When I arrived, I had only $30 left. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in a house that had taken my daughter away. For the next 13 years, my father's story spread like wildfire. My brother and sister believed it, repeating that I was heartless and selfish. My mother, too, repeated the lie with guilt in her eyes. I was the villain in a story I never got to tell. Photos of me were removed from the house, and my name became a taboo at family gatherings. My father used the money to build his legacy. The Thompson Family Foundation expanded, and he was hailed as a hero in the community. But I knew the truth. Even from Seattle, the story followed me. Whenever someone found out who I was, they'd look at me with disgust. But I didn't waste those 13 years in self-pity. I worked hard. I got a job at a local coffee shop and took night classes. Every year, on Emily's birthday, I'd write her a letter that I knew I could never send. I kept them all in a box. Slowly, I started to heal. I graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in social work. I wanted to help other young mothers who felt as alone and helpless as I did. I got a job at a local nonprofit organization that supported single mothers. In 2020, I moved to San Diego. I told myself it was for a better job opportunity, but the truth was, I wanted to be closer to Emily. I bought a small apartment and built a new life. In June 2023, I decided to find Emily. I hired a private investigator, Lisa Adams. I paid her $6,000 upfront and told her that I just wanted to know if she was happy and safe. It took 4 months, but on October 20, 2023, Lisa called. I found her. Emily Rose Miller. She's 5 years old, living at 321 Rosewood Drive in Beverly Hills with Robert and Sarah Miller. She goes to a private school, plays the piano, and has lots of friends. Lisa sent me photos. Emily at a piano recital, smiling and happy. She had my eyes and Ethan's smile. I stared at those photos for hours. I asked Lisa to keep monitoring her for 6 months, just to make sure she was okay. Over the next 6 months, I learned that Emily was not only happy but also very loved by the Millers. They were the perfect parents, and I realized that she didn't need me. On April 15, 2024, I made a final decision. I went to a park where Emily and her friends were playing. When she threw away an empty juice box, I waited until she left and then took it for a DNA test. A week later, the results came back 97% maternal match. But even though I knew she was my daughter, I decided not to contact her. She'd been with the Millers for nearly 6 years. They were her family, and I didn't want to disrupt her happy life. On April 20, 2024, I sent my grandmother an email. I found her. She's happy. She has a family who loves her. I've decided not to contact her. My grandmother replied, I'm proud of you, but sweetheart, when will you choose what's best for you? I didn't have an answer. I'd walked away from Emily twice, the first time because I had no choice, and the second time because I loved her too much to hurt her. I thought that would be the end, but on January 15, 2026, my grandmother had a routine check-up. The doctors found a minor heart condition. She saw this as an opportunity. On February 3, 2026, I got an email from her. It's time, Lily. You've protected everyone for 13 years. Now it's time for the truth. Come home for one last Sunday dinner. I have all the proof. I replied, yes, I'm ready. A few weeks later, on April 13, 2026, I walked back into the mansion on Oakwood Lane for the first time in 13 years. There were 18 people sitting around the table. The room was filled with tension. My father sat at the head of the table, not looking at me. For 20 minutes, there was small talk, but the atmosphere was thick. And then, at 6:35, my father stood up and slammed his fist on the table. This girl abandoned her own newborn baby. She's heartless and a disgrace to the Thompson name. I disown her, he roared. The whole room fell silent. But then, my grandmother calmly set down her glass and stood up. She looked at my father and asked, do you want to tell them why she left? Or should I? My father's face turned white. My grandmother opened a briefcase and started to show everyone the documents. She told them about Emily's birth, about how I'd been forced to give her up, and about the money that had disappeared into my father's foundation. The room was in chaos. People were gasping, and my father tried to defend himself, but it was too late. The truth was out. I stood up and said, I found her 2 years ago. I watched her grow, and I saw that she was happy. I walked away because I loved her enough to let her be happy without me. For 13 years, you've called me heartless, but I was the one who carried the pain so that she could have a good life. What did you love, Dad? Your reputation or your daughter and granddaughter? He didn't answer. I turned to my grandmother, thanked her, and walked out of the door. I didn't run, I didn't cry. I was finally free. 2 minutes later, my grandmother followed me outside. She handed me a small envelope. I've been holding this for 13 years. It's from Ethan. I opened the envelope and read the letter. Lily, if you're reading this, something bad has happened to me. But I want you to know that I would have been a great dad. I love you, and I know you're strong enough to face anything. Always. I cried then. For the first time in a long time, I really cried. My grandmother hugged me and said, you are the daughter I'm most proud of, not for what you've survived, but for who you've become. 3 days later, I received an email from Olivia. I'm sorry, Lily. I believed Dad for 13 years. I didn't ask questions. I was wrong. I wrote back, telling her that I didn't need an apology, just the truth. On May 10, 2026, Emily's 8th birthday, I stayed home and wrote her one last letter. Dear Emily, happy birthday. I don't know what you dream about, but I hope you're happy. I love you, always. I put the letter in the box with all the others. I called the private investigator and told her to stop monitoring. She doesn't need me watching anymore. She just needs to be happy. That afternoon, I sat by the window, sipping coffee and looking at the ocean. I thought about Emily, Ethan, and my grandmother. I felt a peace that I hadn't felt in 13 years. I didn't need my family's approval.